of inquiry. I think we should put it to good use.
Namaste, sir. Sorry to disturb you, sir.
Yes.
Not audible, sir. Voice is not audible, sir.
Maybe a problem from your end, ma'am. We are all able to hear, sir.
Is it better now?
So join again then. Otherwise, you can rejoin.
Sir,
Then
you are audible.
Okay. Sorry. So I think it is a great opportunity, and I'm sure we will find benefits of our endeavors into Indian knowledge systems, which we have delayed for so many years and so on. So my interest in Indian knowledge system has been for quite some time, and therefore I will share some of the thoughts and some of the recent things that I gathered while I wrote a book on this topic. So let me start with the right earnest. I think the first and the most important thing for us is, Indian knowledge system seems to be a flavor of the season now. Everybody says Indian knowledge system, and there are people who think it is also a political agenda being thrusted on us and so on. I think we need to first clear the ground and understand it. Do we really need Indian knowledge systems, and if so, why do we need it, and so on. So let me spend a little time on this particular important question, and then step into a little bit into some details of what I think could be called as Indian knowledge systems and so on. So the first question that we need to answer for ourselves is, what do we do with the Indian wisdom? Every society has its own wisdom, and therefore I think this is a question for every society. So every society has its own wisdom gathered over time. So the question is, what do we do with the Indian wisdom? There are some possibilities. The first possibility is you can simply abandon them. That's one easy possibility, saying that these are all not required. Or you can keep it in a puja room. A lot of our scriptures, which are so valuable, are kept in a puja room, and people every day, put some flowers and hardly open and see it. Just keep it in a puja room as though it is a very holy thing. Indian scriptures are not meant for caged into a cupboard and putting flowers every day in the morning and so on. While that can be fine, but that's not its intended purpose. But some people think you can keep it in a puja room and worship. That's all we can do with Indian wisdom. Certain other people think we can take positions without knowing what it contains. Some of my colleagues talk about Gita and ask them, have you read Gita? And when they say no, I say, I am a researcher, I don't talk to you. Because I don't talk anesthesia. That's not my cup of tea. I should not talk chemical engineering for that matter. I should talk only management because I have read a little bit. So in the same way, somehow Indian knowledge system has a special license for us. Without knowing it, we can go to the rooftop and say it is all religious, it is nonsense, it is dogmatic, all that. People don't read it. So that's another possibility. You can take positions without knowing what it contains. Or there are a set of people who merely glorify the past. So this is one set of possibilities which I see predominantly happening in the country. But there is another possibility to Indian knowledge systems, and that is to get to know firsthand. I think we should make our own judgment. We should know what it is. We can pick a scripture or two and then deeply go through it, and maybe hear a few experts, also read for our own, and get to know firsthand what this really contains. I think it is time Indians start doing it. Therefore, that can be a very useful opportunity for us. And one can explore new paradigms. Why not? If we really get to know a little deeper into it, there is a good possibility that we can actually explore some new paradigms also. Now, why is all this important? Because, people ask me, sir, why do we need ancient Indian wisdom? Why can't we do with the wisdom that we have now? The reasons are simple. The issues of business, government, and society are as old as rocks and rivers. I mean, the context, on the surface, some changes do happen. Because of technology, certain issues may get a little amplified. But the fact that people want to be happy, people want to know what is the meaning of life, people want to know how to lead a happy life cannot change. You bring any amount of technology, these questions are not going to change. and how do you manage people, how do you manage a large scale system, all these are not going to change, and they existed. So therefore, if it existed for a very long time, the second important point is God blessed our ancestors also with a cauliflower in their heads, as much as you and I have a cauliflower in our head in the form of a brain. So I am sure they have also thought about issues. They have also addressed issues. So therefore, it may be interesting to understand what they are saying, how they have actually addressed problems which have been always there, and how they have addressed it. I don't think one can discount it and say all these are useless and so on. So therefore, because everybody has a cauliflower in their heads. There's a third concept in strategy called path dependence. What it says is the path that you can walk forward is a function of the path that you have walked. You know, if I have to use my, my statistical background, it's called, it's some kind of something beyond the Markovian property. You have a random walk and then it transitions happen and so on. Whereas path dependence says what you walk is a function of what you have walked so far. So therefore, it's very important to have a certain continuity of how thoughts have flourished over time. And then one can also ask, why should we reinvent the wheel? There are a lot of ideas which may have been thought about, and why can't we look at them? Maybe we'll pick a few ideas here and there. And also, the question that we also need to ask, can we progress by doing more, using the same set of paradigms, or from time to time we also have to, start with a clean slate, look at certain things once again, go through it and see what it is offering and so on. I think these are all good ideas, and therefore it's not only about ancient Indian wisdom, it is about ancient wisdom. Every society must sort of, make use of a certain accumulated knowledge that comes over time, and therefore it applies very much to us. Before we go further, let me quickly show you some of the snippets. My book has so much of details, I may not have time to go into all that. Let's take the Indian metalworking industry. And if you want to really understand Indian metalworking industry, where do we look for? If you read our scriptures, you find plenty of wonderful ideas. I'll just pop a few ideas here. Look at this. This is a gold coin of Samudragupta. It's a 3rd century CE, kept at the British Museum. And alongside that, you see two beautiful earrings, Andhra Pradesh royal earrings, which belongs to the 1st century BCE, which is photographed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art at London, I think. Now, the kind of intricacy that you see here, a metallurgist and a metalworking person will start thinking, what are all the technologies we need? How do you do ore mining? How do you process the metal? How do you shape the metal? Metal working, metal mining, ore working. So many questions will come. Stamping that particular coin requires a whole gamut of ideas which belongs to what you call it as metalworking. This is a very interesting illustration of what is called downward drift distillation process. The world, India taught this to the world. See, zinc melts, becomes, vaporizes at 500 degrees centigrade. And exactly at 600 degrees centigrade, zinc becomes zinc oxide. So the question was, how do you extract zinc? So Indians, as early as 7th century BC, actually came with a process by which they will melt the metal, they will vaporize it, and then condense it. There are some yantras for it, and then extract the metal. In fact, India was using zinc about 1,400 years ahead of the rest of the world. We actually had an industrial grade production in Rajasthan in 13th century CE. So this is a simple illustration of that yantra, which was used for how do you extract zinc before it vaporizes and becomes a zinc oxide. And so just an example I'm just showing here. You might have read stories of such idols being stolen and taken to Australia and Britain and things of that kind. This manufacturing of these, idols is done through what is called Madhuchishta Vidhanam. And in 300, 400 years back, we started using what is called last wax casting process in the West. The process used is the wax of the bee wax, and so it's called Madhuchishtam. Uchishtam means left out. This is called Madhuchishta Vidanam. Beautiful idols have been manufactured much earlier. You see a lot of Chola bronze idols and which are all being smuggled and stolen and all that. This requires a different kind of methodology which we knew about 600 years ahead of the the other countries, and we have been making very beautiful, very intricate shaped idols and so on. This is a sample set of tools designed by Sushruta using, in fact, Indians are absolutely fabulous in ferrous carbon alloys actually. More about it a little bit, I'll talk a little later. But these tools, apparently, which were in the 2nd century BC, can longitudinally split a hair. That is the kind of sharpness. And you think about heat treatment, think about extraction, think about alloys which are required, and think about the other metalworking technology you need to fabricate such tools and so on, which you see in Ayurvedic texts. Both in Charaka and Sushruta, you'll find these kinds of descriptions as early as 2nd century BC. Wood steel, I don't know how many of you are aware of it. There's something called wood steel. Wood steel is used for manufacturing what is called Damascus blades. The entire warfare in the Midwest and the Europe were using steel exported from India, particularly from Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. That's why it is called Ukku. The wood steel, it became Eggu in Tamil, Ukku in Kannada. It's called, Europeans call it as wood steel. As late as 1920, people have had seminars, metallurgical conferences in which they are not able to reproduce wood steel. The father of modern material science and metallurgy is wood steel actually. There are a lot of things about it you can go and read. Plenty of interest. How did they come with this composition? They are not able to reproduce. Whereas we have been doing it very well. By 19th century, beginning of 19th century, the whole thing came to a grinding halt because of certain steps that British took. I'm not going to talk about it now for want of time. A French writer in 1811 says, in ancient times, the Indians excelled in the art of constructing vessels. The English, attentive to everything in naval architecture, have borrowed from the Hindus many improvements. The Indian vessels unite elegance and utility and are models of patience and fine workmanship. They are very good in shipbuilding. So those kinds of, so this entire page is all about metals and metalworking. And unless you have a certain infrastructure and know-how, many of these are not possible, not to speak of the whole bhasma which are being used in Ayurveda, which is again, extraction of metals like gold and mercury and, copper and all those are being used. That's not at the industrial grade, but it's a medical applications and so on. Let me get into math, astronomy and binary numbers, architecture and so on. This is a typical front view of Khajuraho temples. In fact, Indian architecture had a Dravidian style. There are some textbooks for that. All of them are the 5th century and 7th century CE. You have Maya Matam, you have Samarangana Sutradhara, written by King Bhoja in the 11th century, where you will understand how these Nagara style temples which are in the north and the Dravidian temples are described in Maya Matam and those kinds of textbooks. Very elaborate descriptions of designs, patterns, the sort of proportions that you need to have, intricate details of how do you actually do construction of a variety of structures and so on. Indian tables were based on accurate observations, some of which were made as early as 4300 BCE. Laplace in 1787 said, I think somebody can, I find my theory that at the Indian epoch of 3101 years before Christ, the apparent and annual mean motion of Saturn was 12 degrees, 12 minutes, 14 seconds. The Indian tables make it 12 degrees, 13 minutes and 13 seconds. And then he says the annual and apparent motion of Jupiter at that epoch was precisely as what Indians have said at the Indian astronomy and so on. This is what Laplace said in 1787. This is called a magical pan-diagonal magic square. It is not a simple magic square. It's a pan-diagonal magic square. What it means is, I have colored the blue color, you see, 13, 16, 4. Imagine this like a cylinder. So if you roll the cylinder, the next number is going to be 1, because that will come to this side. So if you add all of them, it will be 34. It is not only row sum and column sum and diagonal sum. Any diagonal if you take, it's called pan-diagonal. And in 2nd century BC and in the 1st century, Nagarjuna has given algorithms for magic diagonals. And in 1495, Narayana Pandita of Kerala mathematics, nobody in the world can come near. I think in Calicut, you must offer a course on Kerala mathematics. Wonderful contributions they have made. The world cannot understand how much contribution they have made. Narayana Pandita in 1495 showed that for a 4x4 pan-diagonal matrix, there are only 385 or so pan-diagonal matrices are possible. Only in 1923 they proved that. But he said it in 1495. So this is an example which I wanted to show. This is a shloka you find in 2nd century BC in Chanda Shastra, Pingala's Chanda Shastra. Yamata Rajabana Salagam. These are 8 ganas actually. The 8 ganas are actually, Yamata actually is 100. Mata Ra is 000. Ta Raja is 001. Raja Ba is 010. It's like that. This shloka gives what is called a binary cycle. In 1983, computer scientists called de Bruijn, it's called de Bruijn sequence. So this is a de Bruijn sequence for length 3. So you can create a binary cycle of 2 power 3, 8 numbers. It's a cycle 100, 000, 001, 010, 101, 011, 111, 110, 100, like that. It are 8 numbers. These are all done. In fact, binary mathematics, lot of them has been done by Pingala. Beautiful algorithms are there. If you have a 10-digit binary number, if you tell the row, 10-digit means 2 power 10 rows are there in the array. If you tell me a row, if you say a row is 1783, he has an algorithm to tell you that binary number. 000100, whatever it is. 10-digit number or any number of digits. Or if you give a particular binary array, binary number, he has an algorithm to say in which row that number is available. These kinds of things have been done in 2nd century BC. He is the father of binary mathematics. This is a beautiful shloka. I mean, it's difficult to read. Aryabhatta, it's Aryabhatta's words. Makhi, Bhakhi, Phakhi, Dhaki, Naki, Ngaki, Ngaki, and so on. This is nothing but your entire Clark's table of R sign differences. The entire R sign differences is available in a 2-line shloka. If you know the Aryabhattian methodology of numbering, you will get the Makhi actually means 225. Bhakhi means 224 and so on. So entire R sign table is available in a shloka. Today we use a Clark's table to keep reading the R sign differences and so on. So that is what this particular table is. So why bother about Indian knowledge systems? It is not about merely knowing about some ancestral knowledge. Please don't, that is a very simplistic idea. It is about protecting received the wisdom, protecting economic security. You may say, sir, what does economic security to do with Indian knowledge systems? Let me tell you, the next 100 years is only intellectual property rights. World Intellectual Property Organization will decide who will take away money on some knowledge. So I have given 2 examples here. An US company was awarded a patent for neem. We were not able to defend. We lost the case. Why? Because nobody could go to the scriptures and take the text and prove that we know earlier than this US company. Because intellectual property right is all about saying who knew earlier than me. We lost that case. Whereas when Dr. Mashelkar, when he was head of CSIR, we were able to fight the case for turmeric and win it. This is a small example. Let me tell you, for the next 100 years, if we miss Indian knowledge systems, we will pay patenting for all the knowledge that we have created because we just ignored them. Therefore, I think it is economic security, it is national pride, it is documenting traditional knowledge. There are a whole variety of reasons why we need Indian knowledge system, not for just tom-tomming about whatever answers. I think it has a gainful application useful for the society, and all that is what I think we should really think about. So with this kind of a quick background, let's try to understand in simple terms, what is these Indian knowledge systems? Okay, so there are three parts to this definition, the way I have created. The first thing is Indian. So therefore, there is, by Indian, we mean indigenous sources of knowledge generated by the Indian society. And when you say Indian society, it points to undivided Indian subcontinent. The modern India is hardly 73, 75 years old. That's not India. That's not Indic or Indian. It is Akhanda Bharata, which starts from parts of Iran and goes up to a little bit of even Thailand on east-west. Of course, north, south is protected by air and water and mountains, so there isn't much of a change in the boundary and so on. So that is what is called Indian. Then comes the second idea of knowledge. Knowledge is which is emanating from the wisdom and insights. And mind you, they arise out of deep experience. They are not dogmatic at all. They arise out of deep experiences, observation, experimentation and analysis, validated, improved and augmented. There is a whole methodology. In fact, chapter 7 of my book talks about how Indians established a mechanism for even valid knowledge, Pramana Shastra. How do you make a knowledge valid? Indians never accepted things that easily. So it is not dogma and all that. Some of them are available as a formal repository of knowledge in literary sources, but a lot of them are also available in oral, rural and oral traditions and so on. And Indian knowledge pervades all the three domains. We always think Indian knowledge is only religious. No, Indian knowledge has spirituality, religious, and a massive amount of what you may call it a secular knowledge, science and engineering, mathematics, arts, painting, architecture, health, whatever you call it. So it is not just religious. The director just now said everybody thinks it is religious. It's not. There is a whole lot of things available in Indian knowledge. And by system, we mean a structured methodology and a classification scheme. There are many classification schemes available. I will just only show one classification which I thought of. The whole knowledge has been so beautifully classified. That's why it is very systematic. Therefore, that is what I call it as Indian knowledge system. To give a very quick kind of a view, so the IKS corpus can be looked at like this. One chunk is literary, which means it is either available on a Talapatra, which is now converted into a paper and digitized, whatever you may call it, with a lipi and written down in some ways and so on. I call it as literary. Then you have non-literary, which has a vast amount of oral traditions, which are all part of Indian knowledge. How can you say they are not part of Indian knowledge? Then in the literary tradition, I broadly put it as three. Sanatan Dharma is one big chunk. Then there are other dharmas, Buddhist and Jain, for example. Then you have a vast amount of regional literature. So many languages and dialects in this country. Although the constitution today has recognized only 22 languages, but there are 1,000 of them in this country. So there is a wealth of literature in that. They are all sometimes very aligned to Sanatana Dharma and other Dharma tradition, but available in different languages and things like that. In Sanatana Dharma, you have core and others. By core, I mean religious and spiritual kind of texts. There is a Chaturdasha Vidyasthana, 14-part classification called Chaturdasha Vidyasthana. Then you have works of several religious leaders, philosophers, sons, Mahajanas. I mean, it's a growing literature. Then you have a vast amount of literature on basic and applied sciences, engineering and technology, alchemy, architecture, aesthetics. Bharata's Nati Shastra is ultimate in aesthetics. Health, wellness and psychology, public administration, the code of living. You have, Subhashita Ratna Bhandakar. A massive amount of accumulated wisdom is all written down in Subhashitas and Niti Shastras and all that kind of things. You have very similar things in Buddhist and Jain also. But the Jain's contribution in mathematics is unparalleled. Phenomenal contribution they have made for mathematics, amongst other things. Buddhists have contributed for shipbuilding ideas, those kinds of things are there. Mathematics also, you know. In fact, I must tell you, Gautama Buddha, when he was interviewed, Swayambara, what I meant was Swayambara, he married, only then he became Buddha. When he married, he was, the Swayambara was conducted by a person who asked him to tell a number up to 10 power 57. It's called Tallakshana. So Buddha apparently reeled out all the numbers up to 10 power 57. Then he told that person, sir, I will tell you one thing. We have a system of counting. He gave a complex formula. He said, put n equal to 0, you get 10 power 57. You put n equal to 1, you get 10 power 99. It goes in steps of 47. There is a formula. I mean, I don't readily remember the formula. And Buddha said, at the 9th counting level, which is n equal to 8, you will get a number called 10 power 421. And Buddha is saying it some 2,800 years back. My dear friends, we have to ask, why do somebody need a 10 power 421? Today, we need a biggest number, as far as I know, we need in India is what they call it as A Raja index of corruption, some 10 power 13 or something. 1.3 into 10 power 13. That's all, 130 lakh crores, some numbers are, you know, Avogadro numbers, some 10 power 23. We don't need bigger numbers. In fact, Romans cannot write bigger numbers. If you have to write 1 crore, you have to put M 1 million times. Because there is no number bigger than M for them. M is 1000. Whereas Indians' contribution to the world was place value system. I have a chapter where exclusively I have discussed only on numbers and measurement systems Indians discovered some 2000, 4000 years back. Anyway, so these kinds of contributions are there, and that is how one can look at. So I will now again take a few specific examples here and there and show you some snippets of Indian knowledge systems, the way it is appealing to engineering students. So there is this great language called Sanskrit. Panini, who lived about 2,800 years back, came up with a set of some 3,983 rules. That's all. You can manufacture any word. In fact, Sanskrit dictionary is of no use, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, because words are manufactured. Now, this is the logic. I mean, Panini did not use this logic. I'm telling you how to manufacture a word. For example, Ramaha, Ramo, Rama. In fact, in my book, I have actually given a derivation of how did it come. It is, you know, in entire Sanskrit language is algorithmic. So you read inputs for the operations to be performed. You take Ram and then add something. And you want to know if you add something to Ram, what will happen. Then this 3,983 rules will be kicked off. So I equal to I plus 1. Is I greater than 3,093? No. Then read that particular ith sutra. See whether this sutra is applicable. If it is applicable, transform that Ram into something. Then I equal to I plus 1. Keep on, you know, I equal to 0, again start. I mean, it's an inefficient algorithm. You can write a better algorithm. I'm only trying to explain what it is. So if after 3,983 rules cannot be applied, you come to an end, that will be a valid word. This is how Panini's Ashtadhyayi is all about. I mean, this is one way to understand. So in Sanskrit, words have a root. Words, any word can be derived. Words are modular. There is a prefix and a suffix. You can actually put them and apply rules and manufacture the word finally. Very logical, very algorithmic in his thinking from 2,800 years back. Just imagine. Now there is something called samasa, compound words. And any compound word in Sanskrit can be actually manufactured through a recursive logic. If you have to put n number of words and make one compound word, samasa, then, and I'm not going to explain the logic, I am only saying there is something called Purvapada and Uttarapada. So you take a Purvapada, add the next, combine it and make a Uttarapada, replace the Purvapada with the new Uttarapada, take the next word and keep, it's a simple recursive logic. And one can use the recursive logic, and when the do loop ends, you will get the word. I'm not joking. This is an example here. I will just show you. There is one Sanskrit word called Nana Chitra Gadodara Stita Mahadipa Prabhabasam. It's a single word. So I have taken a part of it, and I can show. I'm not going to again go through it. I just wanted to show you. Deepa is a lamp, Sthita is placed, Udara is belly, Gata is a pot, Nana Chidra is pierced in multiple places. So you have to combine all these words into a single word, and the recursive logic will work. And you can say start with Nana Chidra, then add the Gata, then add the Udara, then add the Sthita, then add the Deepa. The logic will end, and you will get the word called Nana Chitra Gadodara Sthita Deepa. This is how words can be actually manufactured. So it is a simple recursive logic. And if you understand the logic, complex words become extremely simpler. Sanskrit is actually a very simple language. If you are a logically bent person, Sanskrit is the most adaptive language for people who are logically oriented and so on. So our engineers, we want to improve their logic, teach them Ashtadhyayi one course, they will beautifully pick up their logic, they'll understand these nuances of logic. This is called Sena Chiti. We were doing in Sulba Sutra. Sulba means thread. This is again Vedic times. They do a lot of yajnas, and the shape of the altar, there are 78 different shapes of altars. This is called a flying kite or a falcon. Now here, there are exactly, this cannot be done simply. See, there are 5 shapes here. I have color coded it. There's a square, there is a right angle triangle, there is an isosceles triangle, there is a sort of a trapezium, and there is another sort of a rectangle and a triangle on the top of it. And I have designated as B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, 5 different types of bricks. They have to be manufactured in this particular format. Exactly 200 bricks must be used to actually construct this. So don't think this is a very casual idea. There's a lot of cyclical geometry. The entire Sulba Sutra is all about cyclical geometry. This is a very good elective to be offered. In Canada and USA, they are offering this as an elective. It's called rope geometry. Sulba means rope. So construction, how do you get complex shapes? Because the ancient Indians had only a stick. They can tie a thread to the stick. And if you tie a thread to a stick, the only shape you can generate is a circle. So any shape they will get with a cyclic geometry. So it's called cyclic geometry. You can use circles and construct any shape you want. There's a way to do it. So that is being taught in some places in Canada and US. So this is being done like that. Exactly 200 bricks of these numbers, these shapes, put together, it will form a Sena Chiti. There are 78 different shapes like that. In fact, Indians found the value of pi in Vedic time. Why? Because there is something called Gargapatya and Ahavaniya. One is a circular one, another is a square one. The requirement is the area must be same. If Gargapatya and Ahavaniya must have the same area, without pi you cannot solve. You have to now say pi r square is equal to a square. Only that way you can say that area of a circle is equal to the area of a square. That was the requirement for constructing those altars actually. So this is an example. This is called Varna Meru, Varna Prastara. This is what Pingala says in 2nd century BCE. We are now taught, this is called Pascal triangle. We are now taught this as Pascal triangle. Actually, these are all found in Chanda Shastra. It's called Varna Meru, and there is a construction algorithm for this. You can go any deep. Simple methods by which you can get the Pascal's triangle actually. He called it as a Varna Prastara, and he gives an algorithm for constructing this triangle and things of that kind. This is in 2nd century BC in Chanda Shastra. This is the planetary revolutions in a Mahayuga, and the inferred, it's a little technical, so I'm not going to get into so much detail. Inferred sidereal periods as per Aryabhatiya. And look at the modern value and Aryabhatiya's calculations, and you will find, they are almost same. To the 4, 5, 6 digits, they are all common, because that is the kind of excellence we had in astronomy. So the modern value and in fact, this 577, 53336. Do you know how Indians remember that number? This number is called, there is a beautiful Katapayati formula. It is called Maharaja Raja something. I have to check my book. I'm not able to offhand remember. That 577, 53, 336 is a beautiful word. And if you know the word, you deconstruct this number. This is how our texts are. Our numbering system, handling large numbers were done so creatively. So mathematics is not right brain anymore. For Indians, mathematics was both left brain and right brain, because you have to be aesthetical, you have to be artistic, you have to be poetic, and you have to be mathematical. That's how you'll find if you read the ancient Indian mathematical texts and so on. So this right brain, left brain are all reason making. It is both the brains in equal measure. This is a very celebrated text called Rasaratna Samuchaya. It's an 11th century text. This text has very elaborately talked about the ferrous carbon steel alloy. You may be wondering, why do you need it? Because in Ayurveda, there's a lot of ore mining and ore processing. Therefore, they had a good amount of understanding of iron carbon alloys. So he has three classifications: Kanta Loha, Tikshna Loha, and Munda Loha. Cast iron, carbon steel, and soft iron. And within, these are all shlokas there. You have, for example, Kanta Loka, there are 5 of them. It's called Bhamaka, Chumbaka, Karshaka, Dravaka, Romaka, and so on. And properties are all mentioned. How are they, and so on. So look at the kind of thinking that has happened in 10th century, 11th century CE, in which our metalworking prowess, our metalworking applications, our metalworking technology had left the world behind. If you read these scriptures and understand what they are saying, we are able to get that impression actually. Now, dyes, paints, and perfumes technology, if you take, for example, they say Ajanta paintings are not fading. You go to a place in Sri Lanka where there is this, caves on the top of the hill, where there are again paintings. Ellora paintings, Ajanta paintings are 2,500 years plus. They are not fading. Now, if you ask why, you find answers in our Puranas and in some of our scriptures. For example, you have what is called, Vishnu Dharmottara Purana. It is Upa Purana actually. And it discusses about different aspects of painting. There's a wonderful lady by name Stella Krimshrist. In 1930, she came to Calcutta and written a beautiful book on this Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, where she has discussed in great detail this painting technology and all that. Vatsyayana in his Kama Sutra has talked quite a bit about this painting, how to do, and ideas are there. In chapter 40 of Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, you find how do you prepare a wall for painting. There is something called Vajra Lepa. How do you actually manufacture a Vajra Lepa? They are all available in more than one scripture. I am just talking about only Vishnu Dharmottara here. 64th chapter in the second kanda has 46 verses in which the issue of perfumes is discussed. Different kind of perfumes. How do you actually use the ingredients and create those perfumes and so on. And Varaha Mihira's Brihat Samhita, which is a very celebrated text in the 5th century CE, he has a 77th chapter called Gandha Yukti. And if you want to give your students good problems on permutation combination, you will find in this chapter. He says there are 4 ingredients, 4 proportions in which you can mix it, how many different perfumes he can make. And then he comes up with 174, 720 different perfumes that you can create. All those are described in those 37 verses in that chapter 16, chapter 77 of Gandha Yukti. So I think Varahamihira also talks about Vajra Lepa. How do you prepare a wall for painting and so on. So paints, dyes, perfumes, technology, all those you can see references, details. References, not just passing references. There are details of how do you do it. Now this Vastu Shastra, see today there are two sciences which have been destroyed. One is Vastu, another is called Jyotisha. They have created it in such a way that everybody thinks that these are all witchcraft. They are very good sciences actually. They are not, today's Vastu people come and say, keep your, bedroom here, keep your toilet here and all. That's not Vastu Shastra. That is reducing it. It is like using sandalwood for cooking our breakfast. That's what is happening. You should not use sandalwood for cooking breakfast. So that is what is happening in the name of using Vastu. So let me tell you what is covered in Vastu. You can read any Vastu book you will find. Vastu books talk about town planning. There are land use patterns discussed. How do you design towns and villages and capital city? How do you do site selection for building the capital city and so on? How do you do site selection? This is one aspect of Vastu. The second aspect of Vastu is civil. Very good descriptions on different types of 5-story, 7-story, 8-story, 12-story temples, palaces with 40 rooms and 20 rooms. Very good designs are being discussed. Our architecture students must read all these. Properly, they must be taught. Palaces, houses, forts, public buildings like theater, library, Chikitsa Shala, medical other public infrastructure, horse stable, everything, how do you do it? Furnitures, artistic things, how do you manufacture? All those details are available. Temple architecture, different types of temples, components of a temple. If people understand iconography, which is there in Vastu Shastra, we will advance our textile technology and ready-made manufacture, I am telling you. Because there are only 5 humanoids for male and 5 humanoids for female given. And they say that's the gold standard. So with that, you can actually build ready-made shirts and pants, everything for people, if you read the iconography properly. So our textile technology must read iconography. All those are available in Vastu. Then, as I told you, artistic things are being described, paintings, furniture and doors, sculptures. How do you do all that kind of things are being discussed. And qualification of the architect, Stapati, Vartaki. There are 4 or 5 subordinates, how you select them, what are their skills. There are chapters which discuss about what ought to be done, choice of building, material, wood, etc. There's a beautiful concept called Vastu Purusha Mandala. How do you lay out? How do you look at the top view and then how do you lay out your infrastructure using some principles and so on? So this is called a Vastu Purusha Mandala. I have taken again this Stella Krumstich has written a beautiful book called The Hindu Temples. In 1930s, she came and researched. It's an authentic book called Hindu Temple, from which I have taken this Vastu Purusha Mandala. How do you do a top view? How do you lay out different facilities, either in a house or in a city or in a village? All those, there are 9 by 9 grid. There's a 18 by 18 grid. There's a 10 by 10 grid. There's a 6 by 6 grid. Different designs are available. So there are 8 different villages being talked. This is one type of a village. As you see here, there are zoning. Where do you keep shops? Today, the biggest problem in India is residential layout has commercial. Residential layout also has software shops, busy bazaar, everything. Whereas they have a particular way. There are 12 gates to get into this city, and different things are laid out. Even Arthashastra talks about it, 2nd century BC. Arthashastra talks about town planning ideas in great detail in book 2 of Arthashastra. So I will quickly, I'll conclude here. Arthashastra, the entire Arthashastra is based on 7 principles. Sapta Prakriti is what they call the 7 elements which make a state. The king, the Amatya, the minister, the Janapada, the territory, the Durga, the fortified capital, the Kosha, which is the treasury, the army, which is the Danda, and the ally, which is the Mitra. So the entire Arthashastra talks about, is organized on these 7 topics. You can see the equivalent of that in business management. The king is the owner of the company, equivalent. The ministers are the key CXOs in any company. Markets and stakeholders are actually the Janapada. Fortified capital or the strategic barriers any organization has. Finances, of course, is the treasury. Controls and processes, that is called Danda. Checks and balances, controls and processes. And collaborators are actually ally. There is an equivalent of what he says in modern business management. And there are, as I told you, all these form these components actually. So what you find in Arthashastra is not something some 2500-year-old idea. If you can understand and then relate it to the modern day corporation, we can actually borrow a number of ideas from all these and incorporate it into our thinking and pick up some very good ideas. Of special interest in Arthashastra is foreign policy, because that is what Kautilya's specialty. So he has 6 methods of territorial expansion: Samadhi, Vigraha, Asana, Yana, Samshaya, and Dvaidhi Bhava. There are 6 methods. Let me tell you, if you have to teach market expansion in business management context, market expansion, then some of these ideas are very useful. How can we increase the market share? How do we negotiate with potential collaborators, deal with competitors, and when not to plan for a new market entry? That is called Yana, or Samshaya. When do you not do anything? When do you do something? All these he discusses. What is the value of multiple joint ventures and alliances? He has a concept called Circle of Kings. There are 12 Circle of Kings he talks about. He says that's how you have to make your alliances. So all these are not just some weird ideas. They can be thought through very well, but to think through all of them, first we should know what it is. Without knowing what it is, what can we do? Therefore, I think we have to dip into this corpus and get to know what is going on there. Then we can actually find ways by which we can make use of it and do whatever we want to do. So I just wanted to give a little quick sort of a overview of how things are organized, what are some of the topics that you have, and so on. So let me conclude it by saying we have written a book, 3 of us, myself and Vinayak Rajat Bhatt and Nagendra Pavana, who, in fact, the 3 of us thought about it in Chinmaya Vishwavidyapit. We offered this Indian knowledge system course there. That's when this thought slowly started, and it culminated. Of course, there were background for all. The other 2 are great Sanskrit scholars. So we got together and we wrote this book. This book has 14 chapters on Indian knowledge systems. What, why, and how of all those are mentioned there. I pulled a few ideas only from that book. Extensive original quotes in the form of endnotes. We have actually quoted from Brihat Samhita, Yukti Kalpaturu, Samaranga Sutradana, Mayamata. Otherwise, there is no authenticity. You can't simply talk something and go. But those who are interested can read it. So we have put it in the end note rather than putting it in the middle of the chapter, because for some people it may be a little difficult to read and so on. Certainly, it's first of its kind in India. I don't think anybody has attempted a book on Indian knowledge system. We have thought about it. We have done it. I hope people would, really be happy to look at that. Actually, this book is organized like this. The part 1 talks about Indian knowledge system. In 100 pages, very quickly we actually introduce some important things. Then the rest are all only applications. The concept is just the front part. The Indian knowledge per se. The rest are all on real applications. The second part is about foundational concepts, because our ancestors had very foundational ideas to build a massive infrastructure called science, engineering, and technology. They talked about linguistics and phonetics, algorithmic approaches, language, a way by which you can think of very large numbers, where you can remember numbers and binary numbers and those kinds of things. How do you create knowledge? How do you make sure the knowledge is valid? Nobody should get away with deductive logic, inductive logic, all those they have thought about. So the second part talks about it. The third part talks about science, engineering, technology in Indian knowledge systems, mathematics, astronomy, engineering technology in metals working, engineering technology in dyes, perfumes, irrigation, watershed management. So many things are there. And then town planning and architecture. Then we have the last part, which talks about health, wellness, and psychology, and governance and public administration. So this is how this book is organized. I'm sure some of you may find it very interesting. Since there are quite a few professors who may have an interest in teaching, I also want to a little bit talk about some of the things that we have to be careful when we dip into Indian knowledge systems and we want to teach it and so on. So what are some of the challenges in unlocking this treasure? This is an issue in which I want to, because on my own personal experience, I want to share some of these thoughts. The first challenge is you cannot open simply a traditional work and read and say teach financial management or metalworking. It's just not going to work, because there's a different way they present it. So unless we actually understand it, unless we understand it from that lens, we may say all this doesn't make sense and they're all laughable and all that. We'll just throw it off actually. Because the presentation methodology is very unique. It's completely alien to us. We are all in a Macaulayan system. We have not been taught the way we ought to be taught, and therefore these literature we can't read now. So we have to get back somehow to this methodology of understanding. It is presented in a particular way. So we have lost that touch actually. We cannot decipher the content with a pure logical mind, which is the Western approach. Analytical tools are useful only up to a point. You have to be a little more synthetic in your mind. And in fact, that training will come when we read actually Indian knowledge systems. We'll become very synthetic in our mind. We'll synthesize a lot of ideas. So these are some of the basic challenges that we will face. In terms of some of the pitfalls that we need to avoid, because I have seen people attempting teaching Indian knowledge systems in different versions. I've been teaching for the last 10 years. Bhagavad Gita is a very successful elective in IIM Bangalore. 200 plus students take it for the last 8-9 years. I've been actually offering these elective. I've seen people trying. So let me share some of the pitfalls that we have to be careful. The first and the most important thing is ignorant teaching is more damaging than no teaching. This is a problem with IKS. People simply take something and then throws into the class and they are not able to go one step forward. If students ask some question, we don't know how to actually answer it. I think we need to invest. The point I'm making is we should have a Shraddha. We should genuinely, for the sake of the society and the country, so a few faculty can invest a few years, we will be on our way. We should teach properly. Ignorant teaching is more damaging than no teaching. This is the first problem that we need to avoid. The second, too generic and sweeping conclusions people try to do. See, there is one shloka in Bhagavad Gita, Matta parataram na anyat kinchidasti dhananjaya, Mayi sarvomitam protam sutre manigana iva. It's the 7th shloka in chapter 7. I have seen people saying this is Gita and string theory. To me, this is too much. We should not do such things. Just because it says there is a thread in which the whole world is weaved into it, like different beads of different sizes and colors, that's not string theory. String theory is a complex math. They have attempted a few things to actually talk about. So I think people try to do it. We should avoid. We should present it as it is and leave it, rather than trying to make all these kinds of unnecessary, sweeping and general conclusions. Using old knowledge to explain what is already practiced today. Again, there is this tension and there is this pressure on people to say, oh, Indian knowledge system has all these, don't worry. We don't have to do all that. I think we are simply present. We simply say what is there and leave it. In the book, we have tried to, as far as possible, do that. We have just said these are all what is contained there. Maybe some of them are useful, some of them are interesting and so on. So that is what it is. I think we should not try to glorify the past. And trying to use foreign translations of Indic knowledge is not at all authentic. This is one of the biggest trap that we will fall into. There is a very famous Dutch scholar called Calland. He translated Shatapada Brahmana. In my book, I have given a box in which I explained that. He has translated Shatapada Brahmana, and one mantra he says, the earth is separated from the heavenly bodies by stacking 100 cows one over the other. Anybody who reads such a translation will ridicule Indian knowledge and throw it into the drain, because they don't know that the mantra says Shata Gavaha. Shata Gavaha is Gava means cow is only one meaning. If you look at Nigantu, which is the Vedic dictionary, thesaurus, there are 38 meanings for go. One of them is the earth itself. So the distance between sun and the diameter to distance ratio between sun and earth is 108. That's what the Shatapada Brahmana is saying. It is moved away 100 times, which means the ratio is 100 times the diameter. That's what it is actually trying to say. And he says 100 cows stacked one over the other. I have seen plenty of such bad translations, including Max Muller and all these. So you have to be a little careful about using, because they have, honestly, they have not lived in this culture. Language preserves a lot of culture. So unless you are lived in that culture, sometimes it's difficult to translate. So we have to be a little careful about it. And therefore, the other issue is excessive reliance of using translated work. Please don't give me a black and white painting of Raja Ravi Verma. I want to see it in original. Black and white is only substance, no spirit. So the translated work is like a photocopy of a Raja Ravi Verma's painting. So you have to use it only up to a point. We must invest on reading our original text. Initially, it may be a little difficult, but then we'll enjoy it after some time. So these are some of the things that we need to be a little careful. I thought I will share this, and finally I'll end with why we are in such a mess today. And we have to make so much effort in India to introduce Indian knowledge system. I mean, this looks very strange. In India, you have to make effort to introduce what is called Indian knowledge system after 75 years of independence, because we are almost celebrating 200 years. In another 13 years, we'll celebrate 200 years of Macaulayan educational system. I have just quoted a few texts, I've just taken a few statements from a note he wrote to Queen Victoria. And this is the architect of current education system has this opinion about India. The dialects commonly spoken among the natives of this part of India contain neither literary nor scientific information, and are moreover so poor and rude that until they are enriched from some other quarter, it will not be easy to translate any valuable work into them. And then he goes on to say, a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. This is a challenge to every Indian today. That a single shelf for European library is far more valuable than Aryabhatiya and all that I talked about. No, I believe no exaggeration to say, all the historical information which has been collected from all the books written in Sanskrit language is less valuable than what may be found in the most paltry abridgments used at preparatory schools in England. So again, these are the challenges, but then a person who have this view is the father of the education system that you and all of us have gone through and are going through now. Therefore, I am not surprised that we need to make enormous effort to bring Indian knowledge